Welcome into the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo here with Sam Monson. Sam, I'm going to yell because the headset is on. I'm going to yell. You hate when I get so loud over here. You've been pissing me off all day.
They just turned you down. It's perfect.
Don't turn me down. Do not change my mic. This is not going to be a good podcast. I'm just saying it right off the bat. We're at odds. We've been battling all morning. But how you doing, Sam?
Good. Yeah, no, this is perfect. I think this is what we're discovering is that the way to make these podcasts even better is that I'm just going to piss you off before we have to record every time now. I think it's great.
We went to lunch, had heated arguments, but business must go on. We must continue.
You are making it sound quite a lot like an old married couple.
Look, we're not old and married. We're just we're friends. Sometimes we argue about stuff, football stuff mostly, and that's what's been happening this morning. So maybe we'll agree, maybe we won't. We'll see what happens. It's our midweek mailbag version. We got some great questions through email, which you guys can hit us up over at podcasts@profootballfocus.com with a nice email every week. We're getting a few of those coming in, and of course on Twitter we had a couple questions. I'm at PFF_Steve. He is at PFF_Sam. Before we dive into the questions, want to tell you about our friends over at DraftKings.com. Football season has begun, but it's still not too late to get closer to the game you love with DraftKings 1 Week Fantasy Football. This Sunday, DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 Pick'em contest that is totally free to enter. Pick'em is the newest way to play 1 Week Fantasy Football, and drafting your team is faster than ever. DraftKings has organized players into 8 tiers, and all you have to do is pick one player from each tier. Choose between public contest with big cash prizes or private contest where you can compete against a group of friends. DraftKings also has beginner and casual contests where you play against people of similar skill level. So it's a really good concept by DraftKings. The best part is you get to draft a new team each week without any commitment. So get to DraftKings.com now and use the promo code PFF to play in DraftKings' free contest with $100,000 in total prizes this Sunday. That's promo code PFF to compete for your share of $100,000 in total prizes. The contest is totally free to enter, so why wouldn't you try? Promo code PFF, DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. All right, Sam, we've got 2 podcasts under our belt so far this week. Be sure to check out the archive, guys. Week 2 review. Sam and I broke it down. And then the QB analysis podcast, Zach Robinson and myself went in detail about a number of different quarterbacks. As I said, our midweek deal, it's all about the mailbag and answering your questions. You guys shape our midweek podcast. We're having a ton of fun with this. So let's start with a nice email from Travis. He just said, Travis, via email. He just said, hey, I got a question for you guys. Through 2 weeks, as part of PFF Edge, you guys can actually get these answers. But through 2 weeks, Sam, give me some of the more surprising grades on players. And I'm going to leave the caveat that it's only 2 weeks. It's a small sample size, but it's still never too early to just say, hey, how are guys playing through 2 games?
Yeah, there's some really interesting ones. Our number 1 graded cornerback right now is Quandre Diggs of the Detroit Lions. Lions love.
This is like, we need a sound effect. Yeah, we need some sort of sound effect for the Lions love.
Quandre Diggs, who gave up basically a catch every time he was targeted last year.
Can you bust out some 2016 numbers? Because I actually heard his numbers on a preseason broadcast, and I almost did a double take thinking, there's no way that's right. I had to go back and check our numbers.
No, they were pretty ridiculous. Last season, he gave up 91.3% of all the passes that were thrown his way. So he was targeted 46 times over the year. 42 of those were caught. I mean, that basically, you termed it perfectly. Those are pro day numbers.
Yeah, that's a pro day completion percentage.
Throwing against air would produce numbers pretty similar to that. So that's about how effective Quandre Diggs was last year, which, suffice to say, is not good. This year, on the other hand, he's down at 50%, which is decent. The best cornerbacks in the league are under 50%. So if you're at 50, you're doing a pretty good job. He's been targeted 10 times. Has 3 pass breakups. So he's broken up 3 passes and has only allowed 5 passes, and has the best coverage grade of any cornerback in the league through 2 games, which is entirely unexpected, I would say. Though I did like this guy coming out. I thought he was talented coming out of Texas. Ben Stockwell liked him as well. He was a guy that flashed off the tape for a couple of different times and a couple of different people. So maybe he just had a really ugly rookie year or a really ugly initial season before we're seeing what he actually has.
Let me add some more Lions love to that because, we're 2 games in. We considered the Lions a perfect regression candidate. I don't think they have much star power on defense because you're looking at guys like Quandre Diggs, like you said, 90% completions last year. You're just not expecting these great performances. We could probably answer this question with all Lions defensive players. I mean, we've got Anthony Zettel up there who has a sack and 8 hurries through 2 games. He's playing extremely well in his second season. Cornelius Washington, not a guy that I'm terribly surprised about. I've been waiting for this guy to break out for about 4 years now, but he also has 8 pressures through 2 games. Jeremiah Ledbetter, a late-round rookie, having a good start to the season, was in our race for Rookie of the Year after Week 1. He was a 6th-round pick out of Arkansas. Through the scouting process, I thought he was just that guy that's too small for defensive tackle and not athletic enough for end. They're getting production out of a lot of unsung players. It's actually been a lot of fun to watch the Lions play defense.
Yeah, 3rd year, by the way, for Quandre Diggs, not 2nd year. His rookie year actually...
I didn't call him a 2nd year.
No, I did.
You did?
Kind of. I hedged it, but it was his 3rd year. Last year, the numbers were terrible last year, even compared to his rookie season. So he only gave up 62.3% passes thrown his way as a rookie. But the passer rating he allowed was over 100, allowed 3 touchdowns that rookie season. So it was still pretty bad. Either way, this season is a dramatic jump forward from him. But again, maybe it's just taken him a while to get it at the NFL level. Another guy that's kind of come out of nowhere is Jordan Poyer from the Buffalo Bills. He has had 2 fantastic games, made Team of the Week, PFF's Team of the Week, back-to-back weeks. There's only a couple of guys that have done that. So far, he's been fantastic. Got an interception, 3 pass breakups.
Leads all safeties in the pass breakups there with 3.
4 defensive stops. Great coverage grades. Has been good against the run and 2 sacks, despite barely being used as a pass rusher. He's had a great start to the season.
Those are the types of numbers that, you get a few sacks, a few times knocking the passes away, a couple interceptions. Those are Defensive Player of the Year type of numbers. That's what Jordan Poyer is so far? Is that where we are?
Through 2 weeks, yeah.
Through 2 weeks, okay. That's kind of putting into context, though. We're not going to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but definitely a nice start for Poyer. Buffalo completely redid their whole, their starting safeties, essentially, between him and Micah Hyde coming in from Green Bay. So good start there for Poyer. Give me another name. Well, let me set you up with another name because you came into the office the other day and said Trent Brown is playing good football, right tackle for the San Francisco 49ers. And he's a guy, former Florida Gator. This 2014 Florida Gators offensive line has a bunch of guys like Trent Brown, Max Garcia, DJ Humphries, a lot of guys that are playing in the NFL. And I thought they were like a pretty average to poor college offensive line. And Trent Brown never really had a ton of success playing football, either college or in the NFL. And here he is, off to a really good start so far this season.
Yeah, so our offensive tackle grades at the moment, numbers 2, 3, and 4 are Joe Thomas.
Makes sense.
Trent Williams.
Also makes sense.
Trent Brown.
Whoa, where'd that come from?
Yeah, I mean, this is... Where did it come from? What I came in and said to you is we need to figure out why Trent Brown is suddenly really good at football. Because through 2 games, he has yet to allow a pressure of any kind. He's got 1 penalty in there. His run blocking hasn't been phenomenal. It's all been pass protection, which is, if you looked at Trent Brown play in the past, you would say, if anything, it's going to be the other way. You would get, he might be capable of a season where the pass blocking is just okay, but the run blocking dominates people.
Because he's massive. I mean, he's like 360, 370, big, long guy. If he gets his hands on you, he can move you. But certainly has had trouble against speed rushers in the past. He's not the best athlete in the world. And again, it showed up on tape. Like his grades have never been that great. And here he is.
And it's not like he's run up against a couple of teams that just have no form of pass rush.
Right. That was the first thing I looked at too. I was like, let me think back.
Yeah.
It's Carolina and Seattle.
So if anything, these would have been teams you would have expected to see him exposed a little bit by, and instead he hasn't allowed a single pressure yet.
Yeah, it's an impressive start for Trent Brown. So there's a couple of guys, it seems like they've at least overachieved to this point. Just to put perspective on Trent Brown, 3-year grading, all a part of PFF Edge, 67.7 in 2015, 68.1 in 2016. That's about average, just about average, a little bit below. This year so far, 85. That is a solid dark green in the PFF system, which means, hey, it's really good.
And that sets up the flip side of our most surprising grades, which is Frank Clark and Cliff Averill for the Seattle Seahawks, are currently grading terribly. Those are two guys that have been consistently excellent pass rushers. In particular, Averill has always been an excellent pass rusher. And those two guys have gotten nothing done over the first couple of weeks. Their grades, overall PFF grades, are awful. Cliff Averill, 43.2 at the moment. Frank Clark, 41.7. Those are down with the most ineffective pass rushers in the entire league. And part of it is Trent Brown shutting them down.
And so for Frank Clark, 2 sacks and 3 hurries. Obviously 2 sacks in 2 games. Sam, he's on pace for 16 sacks. How can he be grading poorly?
This is true.
Sacks, we have a couple cleanup sacks in the Aaron Rodgers game. Week 1, Seattle sacked Aaron Rodgers 5 times, which looks great. But when you watch the tape, they got dominated really up front by the Green Bay offensive line. The sacks came from Aaron Rodgers holding the ball a little bit too long. The one guy that got consistent pressure in week 1 was Sheldon Richardson, and he did blow up a few plays. He actually, pushed Rodgers out of the pocket on a few plays, and I think it was Frank Clark and Michael Bennett that benefited from that. So again, from an evaluation standpoint, there were a ton of passes in that game where Seattle got 0 pressure whatsoever. And where they did end up sacking Aaron Rodgers, it was either Sheldon Richardson making it happen or Aaron Rodgers making it happen. We charged Rodgers with 2 of those sacks.
Yeah, he's also rushed the passer 53 times, which is like 18 fewer than Michael Bennett. And Michael Bennett has twice the number of total pressures over the season.
Oh, that's a good perspective there, yeah.
But, we've said before that sacks are all the same statistic, but sacks can be completely different plays. Right. They can be plays where you go Von Miller on a guy and you kill him in 2 seconds and bring the quarterback down with an immediate and impactful hit. Or they can be you just happen to be standing there when the quarterback got flushed past you, reached out a hand and brought him to the ground. Ziggy Ansah got a sack this week when Eli Manning just bailed on the play and fell over in a heap. Now, okay, he beat his guy to get there anyway, but the point is, there can be very different ways. Michael Strahan gets the sack record when Brett Favre just goes, yeah, you know what? No,
they're all the same. They all
count the same, but they can be completely different plays. So just because a guy has 2 sacks through 2 games doesn't mean it was actually that good.
Let me add even more perspective to that. Frank Clark rushed the passer 53 times, as you said. Project that forward. If this was a 16-game schedule, that's 424 times rushing the passer. Chances are you could put almost any edge rusher out there for 424 attempts, and they're going to get they're going to get 8 to 10 sacks at least. Yeah. And to get 16 sacks on 424 rushes, that's only 3.8% of rushes. So again, we come back to this very dorky PFF way to say, just don't put so much stock in sacks, the number. It's really just a fraction of the snaps that these guys play, and we're judging every snap. So right now, the thing that's really crushing Frank Clark's grade, because his pass rush grade isn't actually that bad. Against the run, struggling a little bit. Also has 2 penalties. Cliff Averill has 2 penalties as well, and he only has 2 pressures.
Yeah, his is the pass rush grade.
His is the pass rush.
He's got 56 snaps rushing the passer and just 2 total pressures. So, yeah, that's where your problem is.
So now Seattle's defensive front, we're 3 weeks removed from previewing the season and saying, wow, they've got Michael Bennett back, Cliff Averill back. Those guys were the 2 best. And I love looking back at this. Our top 2 free agent edge defenders in 2013, they signed them and completely revamped that defensive front. But they're starting to slow down a little bit. But we went into the season saying they've got Bennett, they've got Averill, Frank Clark is emerging, and they add Sheldon Richardson to the mix. But through 2 games, it hasn't been that dominant front. So the Seattle defense as a whole is playing great, but it's not like they are harassing opposing quarterbacks the way that they normally do.
No, so far it has not been what you expected it to be, but I don't think Cliff Averill is going to be bad all season long. I don't think Frank Clark is going to be bad all season long.
I'm with you there.
I think we've just, for whatever reason, hit 2 games where those guys have not been firing on all cylinders, and it's just looking bad for them at the moment. That's why I'm saying they're surprising grades, and I expect them to reverse themselves after a while.
We absolutely expect these to improve down the road. Another edge defender that you brought up, Jadeveon Clowney, off to a slow start. Not so much in the pass rush department. He's a guy that we've always had to be. We've been on the other end of the Clowney debate because he is such a powerful and quick run defender.
Well, we've been on both sides of it. It's weird. When everybody was calling him a bust because he was barely on the field with injuries, we were saying, yeah, but every time he's been on the field, he's been really good.
Right.
So, let's not write him off yet. And then he comes in, he plays some full seasons, he starts looking really good. And we're saying, yeah, but I mean, he's dominant against the run, but hasn't really been that good a pass rusher yet.
Right.
So we've kind of been on both sides of the Jadeveon Clowney thing. And now this year is like a continuation of what we were saying, except suddenly the run defense has disappeared.
Yeah, he's usually a very, big impact run defender. You'll have at least one or two big splash plays from him where he'll just whip a guy, make a tackle for loss. Also really good at just jacking up blockers at the line of scrimmage and setting things up for other linebackers to make plays. Just haven't seen that yet from him. One other surprising number or grade for me, a guy that we love, don't tell Mike Renner, Jordan Howard. I mean, the raw stats aren't great, so it's not terribly surprising. And you keep making fun of his hands, which appear to get worse.
Yeah, he's got hands made of feet.
I mean, 2 drops in 2 weeks, and how many? He had 8 last year.
8 on like 29 receptions or something. His drop rate was ridiculous.
And look, I'm certainly one that does not get too caught up in drop numbers. I don't think they're a huge deal unless every single pass that is on target gets dropped. Then it becomes an issue.
It's kind of where he was.
And now they've got Tariq Cohen, and Zach and I were talking about this on the QB Analysis podcast. They're building that offense around Tariq Cohen's versatility, the little running back that can split out wide, that's shifty and all that stuff. Jordan Howard's supposed to be this, every down back, and I don't know if he's going to start losing even more time. So struggling both as a runner and as a receiver.
Jordan Howard last year had a drop rate of 21.6%, which, when you consider that most running backs are being given very easy targets out of the backfield, the next worst mark was 13.8%. So he's almost 10% higher than the next worst mark in there. A guy like Lamar Miller didn't drop anything all year. Damian Williams, nothing all year. DeMarco Murray, 1 drop. A whole sequence of guys that only dropped 1 pass over the course of the entire season. He dropped 8, which is, 21.6% of all his targets. And it was so bad last year that I kind of put it down to just a freak, like an aberration.
Right, there's no way you'd keep that same pace.
You can't be that bad at catching a football because it's insane. Like, anybody can catch the ball that much. But then we come back this year and there's a game-winning pass, essentially, against Atlanta, dropped.
Now, the timing of it is a big factor because, dropping a screen is like, okay, you probably left 8 or 10 yards on the table. Obviously, dropping a game winner against the NFC champion Atlanta Falcons hurts a little bit more.
So he's back to, it's tiny, small sample sizes, so the numbers are going to look silly, but it's 2 drops on 6 targets with just 3 passes caught. So it was a drop rate of 40%. Last year it was an issue, but there was no alternative. You know what I mean? Now Tariq Cohen's there, so suddenly I think you're going to see a fairly distinct split between the guy that carries the ball and the guy that's there on passing downs, because at the moment, Howard just can't be out there.
Jordan Howard is killing both a number of my fantasy teams.
Yep.
And Mike Renner's whole narrative.
Yes.
Well, maybe not, because Zeke Elliott just, what he rushed for 8 yards?
Yeah, but the entire offense couldn't do it. Like, Howard wouldn't have gone anywhere there either.
Yeah. So Mike Renner's whole narrative that Jordan Howard is just as good as Zeke. You put him behind the Dallas line, he'd be fine.
Only now he can't catch the ball.
Yeah.
Zeke can catch.
Howard is killing his own value. Again, it's surprising because we expect these things to bounce back. The hands thing, to your point, though, is starting to become a bad trend and an issue.
1 year the numbers were so silly that you think it can't be that bad. Like, those are silly numbers. There's no way those continue. Now we're 2 weeks in, there's 2 drops, one of which was a game losing drop, and suddenly this is a problem.
All right, that's a good question there. I like that. Surprising grades over week 2, probably something we can almost hit on every single week, and sneak a few different guys and a few different discussions in there. Let's get to some more of the questions through Twitter. We have John at John Moyal. Oh man, here I am pronouncing things.
We'll get to that
on the fly again. Don't make me pronounce things, guys.
No.
John asks, "What's your rest of season outlook for Marty B?" I assume that's Martellus Bennett.
Yep, would assume so.
Would you drop B Marsh, Brandon Marshall? I got a quick. Are we talking about Brandon Marshall, the linebacker, or the wide receiver?
The wide receiver.
Have you seen the linebacker?
Yes.
What he does on Twitter?
Oh yeah,
that is hilarious. I love it. And then I love the people that get confused. How are you dropping passes and tweeting at me at the same time? He's like, well, that's why I'm dropping passes. I'm on Twitter here. For those of you who don't know, Brandon Marshall, Denver Broncos linebacker, when Brandon Marshall, the wide receiver, is playing, and fans are giving him hate tweets.
I just love that the people do that.
A lot of times they're either tagging the wrong Brandon Marshall, they're tagging the linebacker, or the linebacker Brandon Marshall is seeking out his own name, Brandon Marshall, and responding to people that are trashing him and acting like it's him, and people are really confused.
I just love that the first, you're watching a game and, a guy on your fantasy team or your favorite player or whatever looks at that and goes, damn it, that guy dropped a pass. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tweet him right now. I'm going to let him know that sucked. That's what I'm going to do.
Those are hardcore fans, Sam.
There's something.
Those are listeners of the PFF podcast.
Are they? Are they?
If you're one of those people, little PSA here. Please don't tweet at the players. Don't feed the animals. Don't tweet at the players. Absolutely do not tweet recruits if you're a hardcore college football fan.
So I tweeted that Menelik Watson stat was it last week or early this week?
6 sacks in 2 games.
Did he give up 6 sacks? And my favorite one was the guy who replied, tagging Menelik Watson, telling him to pull his head out of his ass. I normally don't like the whole tagging the player thing, but that seemed funny enough that I was willing to go with it.
That actually reminded me of a different question we're going to answer when a player came back at me 5 minutes after a game. We'll get to it in a minute. We're going to answer these questions in 1 second. John had one more question. Which rookie running back will have the best season? So we got 3 answers we got to roll through. Before we do, want to tell you about our friends over at Draft. That's draft.com or Draft in the App Store. Go check it out. Download the app. It is a great way to play fantasy football. They've got some full season leagues that are best ball style, so you just draft your team and leave it. Don't worry about the waiver wire. Don't worry about trades. Don't even have to set your lineup every week. They just take your best players. And there's all sorts of different ways to play. They've got some head-to-head drafts, 3-person draft. I'm looking at a 3-person draft with a $100 entry fee, but $270 in prizes to win. And that's the best part about draft is you can win actual money. And we're going to give you guys an offer to get a free $3 game. You just go there, make your first deposit, and use the promo code PFF, and you'll get a free $3 game over at draft.com or Draft in the App Store. This is the type of place where you're going to go in, play some multiple different style leagues. You've got the full season leagues, like I said, the 3-person draft, your head-to-head, 6-person draft is available. Games start every couple minutes, and a bunch of people at PFF all having a ton of fun over at draft.com or Draft in your app store. Promo code is PFF to get your first $3 game. All right, so let's review those 3 questions. Rest of season outlook on Martellus Bennett. Let's go through that one first. What do you think? Martellus Bennett and the Green Bay Packers. I thought this was a signing that was going to be really, really good for Green Bay. What are your thoughts so far?
No, I agreed with you. I thought that Martellus Bennett in Green Bay, given what Aaron Rodgers was able to produce from Jared Cook last year, who was basically an underwhelming, disappointing receiving threat type of tight end for his entire career, goes to Green Bay, suddenly looks something like what everybody was expecting him to look like, purely because Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. Martellus Bennett I expected to be better than he has been so far, but I think there's still time for him to be that guy. I mean, if there's one thing that defines his career so far, it's complete inconsistency at more or less everything he does. He's had stretches where he's been an all-pro run-blocking tight end. He's had stretches where he's been an all-pro receiving tight end. He's almost never done both of them at the same time in the course of a season. And almost all of those seasons feature stretches where he's done neither. So at the moment, we haven't really seen anything dominant from Bennett. We've seen him be a reasonable part of that team. His run blocking has been better than his receiving. There's a drop in there. There's just hasn't been a huge factor in that offense so far. But I could easily see that changing and him going on a stretch, especially if Rodgers catches fire and they get all those pass protectors back, where he suddenly becomes almost the focal point of that offense, especially with Jordy Nelson potentially missing some time with, I think, a quad injury he has.
I think that's how I look at Bennett in general, is you're not going to build the offense around him. He was in New England last year, and you have him and Gronk side by side, and they're both 6'6", and they're huge. But you would never look at Bennett and say, okay, I'm going to build my offense around you. But if Gronk goes down, I feel pretty good about, making you the guy. That's how I feel about him in Green Bay. That's a good point that you make. So Jordy Nelson's banged up. All right, Martellus, you're gonna see more targets. You're gonna be the guy. That's why I think he's a really good fit for Green Bay. And the pass game had a drop on Sunday night, but overall, I think he'll be an okay weapon. To your point, he's for the most part been a good run blocker for his whole career, and he had a key block that led to a touchdown on week 1 against Seattle. So he's probably the best run blocking tight end that Green Bay's had in years. And so at some point, I think there's a ton of value there. If you guys are talking from a fantasy standpoint, my initial point stands then. It's when Jordy Nelson's hurt. It's if Devontae Adams, that guy just has a roller coaster of a career sometimes where he looks shifty and great and an outstanding route runner. Other times he just looks lost. Sometimes if Devontae Adams ever comes out looking lost, Martellus Bennett's there to be the guy. So value-wise, I think there's a lot there, both from a general football standpoint and also from a fantasy standpoint. What are your thoughts on Brandon Marshall? He's saying, would you drop Brandon Marshall? I'm assuming he's asking from a fantasy standpoint, which is your expertise. But give me the analysis. Where's Brandon Marshall right now? Giants offense, Eli Manning.
Drop him. Drop him fast. Drop him and don't look back. Brandon Marshall has always dropped a lot of passes over his career. He has seven seasons, I think, with double-digit drops over the course of his career. And they're always concentration drops, because if you look at Brandon Marshall, his skill set, he can make some incredible catches. It's not like he just doesn't have hands, you know what I mean? He makes some catches that require having really good hands and the ability to bring in a tough pass, but he'll just drop simple balls. I think that's going to be magnified by barely seeing the ball this year. Like when he's just left on the field a lot of the time, but the ball is not heading in his direction, he's going to be prone to more of those concentration drops. So we saw that this week against the Detroit Lions, Monday Night Football.
Man, he was open. Poor Eli couldn't even complete a pass. He finally makes a great throw.
And I think, it was like the first time Marshall saw the ball come his way and just dropped. Just hadn't been in the game until that point. You need to be immediately switched on. And he just wasn't. The ball hit his hands, dropped. Game over, essentially, because they scored a punt return, I think, on the next play or after, a couple of plays later. So, Marshall has 9 targets through 2 games, has just 2 receptions, 27 yards, and a critical drop in there. I think we're going to see as bad a drop rate as he's had in his career, and his drop rate was always bad, but without enough of the plays on the other side, because he's just not going to see the ball enough. So, I would get rid quickly.
Wow. So I'm not ready to completely give up on him. On paper, this looked like a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Your point about his concentration and what's he going to do in the offense, it's a good one. On paper, it looked great. You've got Odell Beckham who can do anything. You've got Marshall who can just catch Eli's YOLO balls. You got Sterling Shepard who can create separation underneath. It should be this beautiful, well-rounded receiving core. But between offensive line issues, Eli Manning's deteriorating arm and general play, Odell Beckham being injured, maybe it's not all coming together as I thought it might. No. Evan Ingram getting drafted too, another potential weapon. On paper, I thought it was great, but your point, if he's not the guy, maybe that doesn't bode well for his concentration levels. All right, John also asks, which rookie running back will have the best season?
It has to be Kareem Hunt at this point, doesn't it? It's almost already sewn up.
He's ready for it. I wouldn't write off Dalvin Cook.
No, I think there's a couple of guys that could challenge him. If anyone is going to rival him, it's going to be Dalvin Cook, it's going to be Leonard Fournette, and that's probably it. The problem is that those guys both have the Jordan Howard thing in terms of they're not the same kind of factor in the pass game that Kareem Hunt is. Neither of them are as bad as Jordan Howard has been in terms of catching the ball. Although Dalvin Cook, I think, already has 2 drops on just 8 targets.
He's had some issues in pass protection, stuff that popped up in college as well. He had some ugly pass protection reps at Florida State. I'm not going to completely judge the kid off of that. Those little things are important.
His pass protection right now is pretty terrible, but I don't think the Vikings care. He's good enough with the rest of things that he's going to be out there anyway. So
I agree.
It's not bad enough to the point. Pass protection, it's an issue, and it's an issue in terms of grading, but it's only really a problem for a guy's production if it's enough to keep him off the field.
Right.
And his is bad enough to keep him off the field. I just don't think the Vikings care enough to take him off the field.
Currently, Dalvin Cook has our top rushing grade. It's actually not even that close. 89.5, top rushing grade in the NFL. Believe it or not, 3 out of the top 7 are rookies. Chris Carson is up there. His stats aren't as... he has good stats, but he was a guy, Chris Carson in Seattle, you watch that offensive line, and we trash that offensive line left and right. Carson did a really nice job of either maximizing what was given. He juked a couple, he turned a couple tackles for loss into just a 3 or 4 yard gain, which sounds simple, but it's important. And of course, Kareem Hunt, he's our number 7 rushing grade among running backs, but he is the top receiving grade. And, so it's a good group. This is what we expected. And we haven't even mentioned Leonard Fournette or Christian McCaffrey.
Except when I just mentioned Leonard Fournette.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't listening to you.
Yeah, I know.
Am I supposed to listen to you?
A little bit.
It's more that I forgot.
Yeah, I mean, Kareem Hunt's receiving, though, is where I think he's going to separate from someone like Fournette. I could see the two of them having similar rushing totals, but Hunt is going to distance Fournette dramatically when it comes to the receiving part of him. He's already got almost, 100 extra yards than Fournette has as a receiver. 80.
So give me a final answer. Best rookie
Hunt.
Running back. I'll say Hunt as well.
Done.
Dalvin Cook right there, though. Right behind him. All right, we got some fun questions as well here. We have some really fun questions and other stuff going on. So let's get through this here. Let's start with a serious one. We'll go a little out of order. Luke from St. Paul. This is an email version, podcasts@profootballfocus.com. Luke says, a lot of offensive tackles swapped between teams this offseason. Matt Khalil went from Minnesota to Carolina. Riley Reif went from Detroit to Minnesota. He was wondering who has played best so far. Who would you say has won that lottery?
Between those two guys, it's Riley Reif because Matt Khalil has been Matt Khalil, and that hasn't worked too well. Overall, in terms of the tackle merry-go-round in free agency, I would say it has to be Andrew Whitworth, which is, I guess, the one that would make the most sense.
That was expected, yeah.
The guy that was playing at the All-Pro level. The only question with him was, one, age. He's like 127 years old.
Give or take.
And two, he's going to a system that is dramatically less beneficial to pass blocking than the Cincinnati Bengals. He's got to pass block for longer. He's got to do it for a quarterback that isn't getting rid of the ball as fast as humanly possible. So it's a tougher gig for him out there with the Rams, but he's doing fine. He's allowed 1 sack and 1 sack only, like no additional pressure over the first 2 games. He's been pretty much Andrew Whitworth so far, which is to say dramatically better than any other of those first-year free agent tackles.
Very important for the Rams to just get any kind of upgrade along that offensive line. And we're talking about now they've gone from Greg Robinson, who another guy that essentially was a free agent. He got released, and he's struggling with the Detroit Lions.
Well, he's allowed 9 total pressures so far through 2 games. So 9 versus 1.
Right.
Pretty big difference.
So they've upgraded with Greg Robinson. Detroit has... they're on the bad end of because Taylor Decker out for the season. They're starting left tackle now. Greg Robinson is starting there. To finish the thought on Riley Reif, Riley Reif had a good week 1, didn't give up a pressure against New Orleans. He gave up 5 in week 2. So you still want to see that week-to-week consistency out of Reif. Matt Khalil this weekend against Buffalo, 2 sacks and 5 hurries, surrendered one of the worst grades of his entire career in week 2. So,
which has seen some ugly grades.
Yeah, there've been some ugly ones, and as Vikings fans like to remember, Vikings coach Mike Zimmer likes to take a few shots at PFF. A lot of that started because we happen to say that Matt Khalil is not a great left tackle, which eventually they completely agreed with.
Yeah. The Matt Khalil thing's not working too well. Though at least they didn't sign Menelik Watson, who's given up 6 sacks and 13 total pressures through 2 games.
That's sack total.
Have you seen
Eric Flowers has 4.
Have you seen Menelik Watson's schedule for the rest of this year? So all of that, the 6 sacks thing is without having, he still has to play Justin Houston twice.
Well, you just never want to play right tackle in the AFC
No, but it gets worse. He has to play Justin Houston twice, Khalil Mack twice, Joey Bosa / Melvin Ingram once more. He also has on his schedule Cameron Wake.
Oh boy.
Carlos Dunlap. Who else he got? Jerry Hughes, the Buffalo Bills. He's got somebody else.
Watson watch.
He's got someone else. If he stays out there for the full 16-game schedule, he could cough up 20 sacks in a season.
We're going to have some tallies on the wall in the podcast room here. Watson watch.
Yeah, that's going to be our first decoration.
All that said, I did post a nice video on Twitter the other day to say don't completely judge offensive linemen based off sacks surrendered.
Except Watson right now.
Watson right now because it's a great stat. Yeah. But just for perspective, the other night, Eric Flowers was the one getting torched.
The Giants and the Eagles are also on his schedule.
So you've got JPP,
Brandon Graham.
You have Brandon Graham.
I mean, it's a nightmare. The poor guy is just out there getting crucified.
The quest for 20 sacks from Menelik Watson. Just to finish my thought, Eric Flowers was giving up multiple sacks on Sunday night, Greg Robinson was on the other side. Maybe even worse. Whiffing on blocks even worse or just as bad as Eric Flowers, but he had Matthew Stafford, maneuvering around the pocket to save him from turning pressures into sacks. So the point is, PFF grade will sort through the quality of the block. Hey, you whiffed on a block. Once the block's by you, the difference between it becoming a sack, a hit, or a hurry is very much on the quarterback, the drop back depth, the release of the quarterback, all these different things. The defender, whether or not the defender can actually wrap up. So we talked about Mike Zimmer and how he likes to criticize PFF, or at least call us out every now and again, which is fine. We like Mike. Which transitions nicely to a friend of the show at The Stats Life. Great feedback from him on Twitter all the time. And he asks a good question, Sam. What is the meanest thing an NFL player or coach has publicly said about PFF? Is it Shady McCoy calling you guys nerds? That was this offseason. He called us nerds.
He did. That's publicly, that's probably one of the meanest. I think the worst ones we get are the ones that aren't public. I mean, I know my favorite one was our Khaled Al-Sayed getting death threat from a player because he was graded badly in a game he did.
That was early days of PFF, right?
Yeah, that was pretty early. But a full-on death threat, that's good going. You've hit a nerve when a guy's giving you the death threat back.
I'm honestly surprised we haven't had worse, just because whether players like to admit it or not, PFF grade does have an impact on their life. There's every contract negotiation in the NFL pretty much has some level of PFF involved in it now.
It's more that I don't think people are. I think when you get the bad grade on a guy, the player ignores it. You know what I mean, or dismisses it, or says it's bull and just moves on. What they're looking for is the good grade. So almost all of the contact I have from players is when the guy isn't graded great. He thinks he's done better, and he's coming looking for a better grade. And he says, "Look, how come this and this happened? Why haven't I got a better grade?"
I want the better grade.
Yeah, exactly. And there's some argument there and whatever. But you don't get a guy coming saying, "Look, my grade was terrible." What the hell? That's not the argument you get, because it's so far, beyond what they think. They're just not even engaging. They just dismiss it. But it's the guys that come looking for the better grade that you get the more interaction with.
Look, if I was a player, I would want to trash PFF too. I mean, if I was a lot of offensive linemen like to criticize us.
Yeah.
We get a lot of the standard, you guys have never strapped on a helmet. Some guys have. Mm-hmm. You guys have never done this. You're just a bunch of computer geeks or whatever they think we are, which isn't true. We've got some former NFL coaches. We have former NFL players. We have former minor league baseball players. We come from a variety of places, Sam.
Yeah.
We have some former Irish League All-Stars.
We do.
Were you ever an All-Star in the...
Second team all IAFL.
I'm pretty impressed with you. Second team, Irish League,
that seems
whatever.
to be a lot like the Pro Bowl voting, though, in that I was terrible the year that I was second team.
You made it off reputation?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I would be more proud of that. Not so much the play, but I have a reputation that's getting me this award.
All reputation. I was done.
One that came up for me last year that was not, I don't know if it was harsh or mean, but it brought out the mean fans. Okay, so this was, we're watching, it was Arizona against Seattle, Sunday Night Football. And I made a very innocent tweet about Deon Buchanan. And I made the point because everybody talks about this during draft time, right? Everybody's looking for the next Deon Buchanan. We need a safety to turn into a linebacker. And I said, if you really break down his game, he's below average against the run, right? He gets beat up in the run game, and he's good in coverage. He's a good coverage linebacker.
Yeah.
If you're honest to yourself, he's an average linebacker. If you want to weigh coverage higher, whatever. So I made the statement that Deon Buchanan's really an average linebacker. And within 5 minutes after the game, he quote tweeted me something about, like, you just don't know what you're talking about. You never played the game, or keep hating, or whatever he said. It wasn't that mean. But man, the mean Cardinals fans came out.
Oh, yeah, we've had a lot.
They came out.
Darren Lee was one that used to quote tweet Mike a lot.
Oh, geez. Mike said Mike implied that he can't even walk in a straight line without falling over. Mike said his balance is terrible, and he's got no clue.
He's not wrong.
Well, if you're listening to the show, email us at podcasts@profootballfocus.com. We could discuss your balance.
Explain yourself. Yeah.
So that wasn't so much mean by the player, but to me, it's a fascinating concept. Just picture this, right? Deon Buchanan's getting out of a game in which they just tied Seattle 6-6. He gets to his locker and he's just,
oh no,
let me search my name on Twitter and see what they're talking about.
First thing players do when they get off the field is get on the phone and start looking up. I mean,
What did people say about me?
We were in the locker room for the Titans against the Falcons last year on our training camp tour, and we were, immediately after the game into the locker room, and the first thing Derrick Henry was doing was looking up highlights of Derrick Henry to see the runs that he just made during the game. Honestly, the very first thing these guys are doing is getting on the phone, and it's whether it's Twitter to find out what people are saying about them, whether it's just looking up the highlights of what they just did. That's what they're doing.
Crazy millennials and their technology. I have to say, toward the end of my baseball career, I was a little bit, I'll jump on the phone
straight
when the
on
game's
the phone,
over.
looking at the highlights of Big Steve.
I may have been on some San Francisco Giants minor league message boards every now and again to see if somebody said something nice about me, which never, ever, ever happened. But I kind of get it. But at the same time, I will say the best players in the NFL do a really good job of just laser focus and don't worry about what the outside people are saying. I mean, it's not a great thing to.
I wonder what the breakdown is of the guys that are doing that. Like, how many of them are the all pros? How many of them are, the rookies new to the league that are a little bit new to all this?
You think Tom Brady's going in there checking what people are saying about him?
Yeah, or like a grizzled offensive lineman, like Joe Thomas. The first thing he does is sit down and check Twitter for all the positive Joe Thomas mentions.
Well, Joe's funny. Well, Joe's pretty funny on Twitter. He does a good job with that.
But I'm guessing still he's got, better things to do immediately after the game than checking out people praising him for 10,000 snaps.
Well, he's been in the league over 10 years. It's probably an ice bath to kick things off. Okay, so I don't think there's nothing worse than that. If we think of something else that was really mean in public.
I can't think of terrible ones in public. Too much. The general, people dismissing us as,
General dismissal. You've never strapped on a helmet. A lot of offensive linemen say that we don't know how to put a helmet on or shoulder pads or something, which, I don't know, might be true in my case.
Pretty easy. It's not hard. Trust me. I think
I can learn. I'm a quick learner.
I think you could do it.
We'll practice on a podcast just to.
I'm not helping you strap it on pads.
I'll do it myself, but just to kind of prove them wrong, just to show them that I can grade them once I put the pads on. Then I'm allowed to grade them on a play-by-play basis.
All right, we'll just do it. We'll do it for the photo,
for credibility's sake. All right.
What's anonymously? You don't have to say who it is. What's the meanest thing a player has said to you on a Twitter direct message? Like an insult that was way past the line. You don't have to say who said it.
I don't think I've even had any of those on Twitter. The Twitter DM people are all fine because they want something. It's the ones that just come after Khaled with the death threats that are.
The death threat's still the worst. We haven't topped that since the early days.
Yeah, we really haven't.
All right, we have another great question. This is from, come on, John K. John K. Emelianoff, at John Emelianoff, asks, it was a two-part question. The first part really sums it up, though. Would Cam Newton benefit from practicing with a lightweight Nerf ball so that when game day comes along, he no longer throws crazy high passes?
This is a great question.
In his follow-up question, he essentially said it would be like the opposite effect of a baseball player who in the on-deck circle uses a heavy bat so that his actual bat feels lighter when he is swinging. So, Sam?
This is brilliant. I don't know why somebody hasn't done this before already. Cam Newton is calibrated a yard too high. Somebody has been in his circuitry and has just messed with his wiring, and he can't throw a ball that is not a yard higher than it needs to be.
That is a fantastic description. He's calibrated a yard high.
And that is why the Panthers stopped trying, and they just went out and got a whole bunch of 6'5" receivers.
Right, you try to overthrow these guys.
This guy is just too small for Cam Newton to hit. He's too low to the ground, and he can't put it there. We're going to get a whole bunch of 6'5" guys. Kelvin Benjamin can get 9 foot in the air, and that's where the ball is going to arrive. So that's what they did. What they need to do is to get the Nerf ball out and say, look, Cam, now you can't. If you throw this like that, it's going to be 25 feet over his head. Let's aim at the floor, and then it'll hit him perfectly in stride at the eye level. I think this is the best idea, the second best idea, in fact, anybody has had for this week's show, because the best idea is coming up.
The best idea is coming up. I want to get Zach's opinion on this. Our QB
absolutely.
Expert, this will work. Again, I like to bring up my baseball career as much as possible, but I will say there was one game in college, actually, I could not throw. Like, everything was just in the dirt. I was just throwing low, and the next pitch I tried to throw about head high, and I actually threw it where I wanted.
Yeah.
Sometimes just changing the eye level, changing the target, like you said, throw it on the floor.
It's like golf.
And you hit him. You just change. Change your target, right?
If you're going to slice the ball every time 20 yards to the right, just aim 20 yards to your left.
The Nerf ball, though, will absolutely not work.
Why not?
It's really not going to work that way. It's just not how throwing works. but I love the creativity.
What about the Nerf balls with the tail fins? Does that change things?
I would just want to see Cam Newton throw that in general, just to see if he could throw it 150 yards.
I just want to see him practice with those. Can you imagine running like regular team practice with the whistling tail Nerf ball?
We are going to send a box of Nerf balls.
PFF branded Nerf balls.
PFF branded Nerf ball. We did those for the office anyway.
Hell yeah.
Taylor, write that down. That's what we're going to make an order. PFF Nerf balls. Okay, our friend at Job Related Tweet. I'm going to suggest you guys follow at Job Related Tweet.
Yes.
I've only really thought this for the last 2 days because he sent us some fantastic messages. He only has 14 followers right now, which is really a travesty because I don't know what's going on in this guy's brain, but he's ready to change football.
He's up to 18 because I retweeted the thing. I didn't even see it until today. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I missed out. I missed out in 24 hours of this.
I forget, what was the first one that he posted? He had two different...
The ball of people surrounding the player. So instead of a flying V, it was just a circle formation around a running back, and then you could lead him forward.
Right, you can't get through...
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't really think that one would work because it just wouldn't. It's a dumb idea.
The second idea will work. We have a graphic. We'll tweet it. We'll tweet it from the PFF podcast page. We'll retweet it.
Absolutely.
So go check out at PFF_podcast. We need everybody to follow there because you guys will get your updates on when the podcasts are coming out, all the various PFF podcasts. We'll retweet it from that account. You guys have to see this. This is a new way. Do you want to describe it? A new way to throw a Hail Mary.
This is the greatest coaching mind of the 21st century. This is the new undiscovered Bill Belichick sitting here with MS Paint, presumably.
With 18 followers on Twitter.
Drawing up genius on...
Do not hate on MS Paint because this is pretty well done. It's definitely MS Paint, though. Yes. I can tell. I'm an expert in
you
paint.
You are. You know MS Paint when you see it. So his play is how to fix the Hail Mary play.
By the way, there's 12 guys on defense on this.
Not a problem.
That's okay.
Not a problem. This will overcome that. Hail Mary, it's a 50-50 attempt at best, unless you're Aaron Rodgers. He's got a way of changing the odds, tilting things in your favor.
That's what this is going to do.
And it's a 4-step process. So, number 1, 5 wide. It's fairly standard.
Spread the field.
Just spread the field, everybody out in a pattern.
You need 5 receivers for this.
You
actually.
do.
Very specifically need 5.
You do. Number 2 is everybody go deep. Again, pretty standard Hail Mary. Everyone's going in the end zone. Here's where the magic happens. Number 3, 4 of your receivers need to form a square holding hands around the 5th receiver.
So the 5th receiver's in the middle.
In the gap, and everybody else is holding hands around him to form a square. And this is the reason you do this, because otherwise it would look silly. The defenders can't break through that square because otherwise it's pass interference.
They can't get in.
It's illegal contact. They can't get through that.
They cannot run through the 4 receiver force fields that is protecting the 5th receiver, presumably your best hands guy. You want your hands guy in the middle.
So the quarterback now has a larger, undefended area to throw to. He now has this square into which he can put the ball, and the one lone receiver there can just pluck it out of the sky completely unmolested by defenders.
This is where I lose at job-related tweet because
there is
box
a flaw
4
there.
Says QB has bigger undefended area to throw to. However, the quarterback it's a beautiful picture of Christian Hackenberg.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if he'll have the opportunity to throw a whole bunch of Hail Marys. So if you throw a better quarterback in there, I'm all on board. This is an unbelievable idea. How does this not work? How does this fail, Sam?
It doesn't. This is perfect. This is genius. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I'm not trying to downplay it at all, but perhaps the defense catches on and they try to get inside the force field before it's formed.
Before it's formed. So there's going to be some form of hand fighting segment of the play where those 4 guys are trying to join together whilst keeping all of the defenders outside of them. That's going to be tricky. On the fly.
You don't think that having 4 receivers get into the end zone at relatively the same time.
Here's the adjustment.
Before the quarterback gets sacked, play ring around the rosy around their teammate.
Here's the offensive
You don't
adjustment.
think there are any logistical issues there?
Are you ready for this? The defenders catch on. The defenders try and insert themselves into the middle of this force field, right? What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to run down the field holding hands already and then immediately wrap around the 5th receiver once you hit the end zone.
So, all right. So job-related tweet. We tighten the alignments a little bit, right?
So we're going to have one guy on one side.
I say, well, you got to go tight split so you're as close to the hash marks as possible. So you can unite about 5 yards down the field, hands together, sprint into the end zone.
Yeah.
and then boom,
And
circle it up.
And circle the fifth guy.
Circle the fifth guy, and then it's an impenetrable force field.
Yeah, then it's perfect.
This is genius.
This is flawless.
I will email this to Belichick immediately.
I think you should.
We're changing the Hail Mary game here, guys. It is better than the idea of the circle around the
Much better.
The ball
Much
carrier.
better. That one's just not a winner. No, he had one in him, and this was it. The first one, not good. That's the first iteration. The first prototype of something never really works.
Yeah.
And you gotta wait for version 2.0, version 3, and that's when you get the really good stuff.
Plus, the pass game is where you create
Exactly.
points.
So this is what it is. I want to end on my favorite question of the week, which I think was given something in jest, because we've kind of covered it before. But it's pronunciation. Again, this is why I'm taking over, Steve, because you and pronunciation.
I'm out. I'm taking off for the rest.
It's going to run us off the rails a little bit. So somebody asked, I've made this pitch many times before, that for some reason Americans appear to be incapable of saying Glasgow. Graham Glasgow. Who's the other Glasgow? Is Graham?
Ryan.
And Ryan Glasgow. Not the way you pronounce it, just isn't, because it's named after a place.
Glasgow.
You see? So I figured, who better to find out how you pronounce Glasgow, which was the question, by the way, in case I didn't actually say that.
That was the question.
How do you pronounce Glasgow? I figured, let's go to a Scotsman. Let's go to a Scotsman that lives in Glasgow. Gordon McGuinness, how do you pronounce Glasgow?
You pronounce it Glasgow.
Perfect. There you go. That's how you pronounce Glasgow. Game over. Done. Set in stone. Glasgow, incorrect.
So that'll do it for us today. That is our mailbag version. We're doing it every Wednesday, and it's all about you guys. You guys create this show. Whether you guys have a better Hail Mary formation, you want to know about pronunciations, you want to know about people that hate us, or you just want to know who the breakout players are in the NFL, we will handle any and all questions. We appreciate all of your interaction. Hit us up at podcasts@profootballfocus.com with your email questions or comments. And of course on Twitter, he is at PFF_Sam. I am PFF_Steve. We have some great offers for you guys, great opportunities for you guys to pick up PFF Edge. That's our $40 product. There is no better place to find a deal that suits you than profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. So profootballfocus.com/PFF-offers. Go to that page, and there are great opportunities for you guys to grab PFF Edge for the cheapest we have available, right? Is it 10?
10.
Okay. That's like a big secret that we weren't supposed to tell everybody, right?
Was it? Oh, whoops.
Okay, so we weren't really supposed to tell everybody, but that's the place to go. PFF-offers. Go check it out. You can get Edge for as little as $10. It's normally $40. I promise it'll be worth it. If you guys want to get PFF Elite, we give you a chance to get this for free. It's a $200 product. All you have to do is leave us a nice 5-star review on iTunes, leave your email address or a Twitter handle so we can get in touch with you. If you win, we will give it away to one lucky person every single week. That's PFF Elite, which is like our special secret society, secret Facebook group, and you guys get whatever you want with PFF Elite. So go check that out. Give us a 5-star review, and we will give one away every single week. That'll do it for us. Don't forget, we've got one more podcast this week. It is your Week 3 preview coming up live from Queen City Radio in Cincinnati. The bar atmosphere that we had last year, had a lot of fun with the live crowd there. And go check out the archive if you still want your Week 2 review or some in-depth quarterback analysis. It's all here on the PFF podcast. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already, because the content will keep flowing all season. Thanks again to everybody for listening, and we'll chat again with our Week 3 preview.